The crowd fell silent as Mia guided Chance through the final sequence of their pattern. The once-rejected horse moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible just months earlier, his copper coat gleaming under the arena lights, each stride perfectly matched to her subtle cues. As they completed the final turn, Mia could feel the collective intake of breath from the spectators who had once warned her mother against wasting money on that dollar horse. Chance's ears flicked back toward her, attentive and trusting, as if to say he knew they belonged here, despite everything. Mia leaned forward slightly, her hand resting on his neck, feeling the strong pulse beneath her palm. "We did it," she whispered, her voice catching as she remembered the terrified animal who once couldn't bear a human touch. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena, but all Mia could focus on was this moment of perfect understanding between her and the horse nobody wanted. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to when everything seemed impossible. 6 months earlier, Mia sat alone at the far end of the cafeteria table, pushing soggy fries around her plate. The laughter from the other tables felt like it belonged to a different world, one she couldn't access since her dad lost his job and they'd moved to her grandmother's small farm on the edge of town. Her once promising riding lessons had been the first thing cut from the family budget. "You're not eating again," observed her best friend Ellie, sliding onto the bench across from her. "Is it about the horses?" Mia nodded. "I miss it. Being around them was the only time I felt like myself." That evening, Mia's mother burst through the door, still wearing her waitress uniform, clutching a flyer in her hand. "There's an auction this weekend. They're selling off horses from that bankrupt breeding farm, some for as little as $1. $1. Mia's heart skipped. Why would anyone sell a horse for $1? Her mother's expression softened. "Because they're the ones nobody wants, honey. The difficult ones, the injured ones. The ones that would cost more to feed than they're worth." Something in those words resonated deep within Mia. Unwanted. Difficult. Not worth the investment. She knew how that felt. The auction barn smelled of dust, manure, and desperation. Most of the dollar horses had already been claimed by the time they arrived, some by kind-hearted rescuers, others by the meat buyers who lingered at the back of the crowd. Mia's stomach twisted at the thought. That's when she saw him, a copper-colored gelding with a white blaze, standing in the corner of the last pen. Unlike the other horses who pressed hopefully against the gates when people approached, this one faced the wall, his body trembling slightly, his tail clamped tight against his hindquarters. "That's Chance," said a man leaning against the fence. "Third time he's been through auction this year. Nobody can do anything with him. Bolts, bucks, won't let you near him with a saddle. Previous owner tried to beat some sense into him, didn't work. Waste of good hay, if you ask me." Mia stepped closer to the pen. The horse's ribs showed through his dull coat, and old scars crisscrossed his flanks. When he finally turned his head, just slightly, Mia caught a glimpse of his eye, not wild with anger, but clouded with something she recognized immediately. Fear. Pure, consuming fear. "Mom," she whispered, "that's the one." Her mother looked horrified. "Honey, no. You heard what that man said. He's dangerous." "He's not dangerous," Mia insisted. "He's terrified." The debate continued all the way home after they'd paid the single dollar that made Chance theirs. Her mother's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. "I don't know what I was thinking, letting you talk me into this. We can barely afford feed, let alone vet bills if he hurts himself, or worse, if he hurts you." Mia stared out the window, watching the countryside roll by. "He won't hurt me." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because," Mia said softly, "we understand each other." The first week was worse than anyone predicted. Chance refused to be caught, racing around the small paddock they'd cleared for him, sweat darkening his coat despite the cool spring air. When cornered, he would tremble so violently that Mia feared he might collapse. "That horse is a lost cause," her grandmother declared on the third day, watching from the kitchen window. "Some animals just can't be fixed, Mia. Some hurts go too deep." But Mia refused to believe it. Instead of trying to catch him, she simply sat in the paddock each day after school, her back against the fence post, reading aloud from her science textbook or just talking softly about her day. Chance would watch her from the farthest corner, nostrils flared, ready to bolt at the slightest movement. On the 7th day, something changed. Mia arrived with her usual apple slices and sat in her spot. After an hour of quiet reading, she looked up to find Chance standing 15 feet away, his head lowered slightly, ears focused on her. Not approaching, but not fleeing either. "Hey there," she whispered, her heart pounding. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The breakthrough was so small that no one else would have noticed it, just a horse, standing still instead of running away. But to Mia, it felt monumental. That night, she wrote in her journal, "He chose to be near me today, just for a minute." But it was his choice. Days turned into weeks. The routine never varied. Mia would sit in the paddock, sometimes with homework, sometimes with just an apple and patience. Chance's circle of comfort gradually tightened. 15 feet became 12, then 10, then 5. The first time he stretched his neck to take an apple slice from her outstretched palm, Mia had to fight back tears. "Don't move," she told herself as his whiskers tickled her hand. "Don't scare him. Don't ruin this." Not everyone shared her excitement. When Ellie came over and saw Mia's painstaking progress, a horse that would now eat from her hand but still couldn't be touched, she frowned. "You've been at this for a month, and that's all?" "My cousin broke her pony to ride in 2 weeks." "I'm not breaking him," Mia said firmly. "I'm waiting for him to decide I'm safe." The local trainer who boarded horses down the road was even more blunt. "That animal needs a firm hand, not coddling. You're wasting your time with all this sitting around. Put a rope on him and show him who's boss." But Mia held firm, even as doubt crept in during the long evenings when progress seemed to stall or reverse for no apparent reason. There were days when Chance wouldn't come within 20 feet of her again, days when the fear returned to his eyes as sharp as ever. On those nights, Mia would lie awake, wondering if everyone was right. Maybe some horses couldn't be saved. Maybe some wounds never healed. The morning Chance finally let her touch his neck was ordinary in every way, overcast, slightly humid, with the scent of coming rain hanging in the air. Mia sat cross-legged in the damp grass, sketching the paddock fence in her notebook, when she felt a warm breath on her shoulder. Chance had approached from behind, silent as a shadow, and now stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Moving with glacial slowness, Mia raised her hand. Chance flinched but didn't retreat. Inch by inch, her fingers closed the distance until they made contact with his warm coat. Beneath her touch, his muscles quivered, but he remained still, his dark eye watching her with cautious curiosity. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for trusting me." From that day forward, progress came in small but steady increments. Mia could now approach Chance in the paddock. He would lower his head for the halter, though his whole body still trembled when the rope went over his neck. Each victory was celebrated, each setback weathered with renewed determination. Then came the thunderstorm. It hit without warning one afternoon while Mia was at school, the violent, cracking thunder that shook the windows and sent Chance into blind panic. By the time Mia's bus dropped her off, he had already crashed through the paddock fence, leaving splintered boards and blood-smeared wood in his wake. They found him 2 miles away, huddled against a stone wall, his shoulder lacerated, his eyes wild with terror. It took 3 hours to coax him into the trailer, and when they finally got him home, he wouldn't let Mia near him. All their progress, erased in an afternoon of fear. "I told you this would happen," her mother said that night, the vet bill clutched in her hand. "We can't afford this, Mia. Not with your dad still looking for work. Maybe it's time to consider finding Chance another home." "There is no other home," Mia said, her voice breaking. "Nobody else wants him. They'll send him to slaughter." "Then maybe that would be kinder than letting him live in constant fear," her mother suggested gently. That night, Mia sat on the porch steps, watching the stars emerge one by one. The weight of failure pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. Maybe her grandmother was right. Maybe some hurts went too deep to heal. Maybe she had been foolish to think she could save this broken horse when she could barely hold herself together. "Problems with your project?" The voice startled her. An old man stood at the bottom of the steps, his weathered face kind beneath a battered cowboy hat. It was Mr. Emerson, their elderly neighbor who rarely left his property. "My horse," Mia corrected, wiping her eyes. "And yes, he got hurt today, and now he won't let me near him again. Everyone says I should give up." Mr. Emerson eased himself onto the step beside her, his joints creaking. "Mind if I tell you a story? About a horse everyone said couldn't be saved." For the next hour, he spoke about a mare he'd rescued decades ago, so traumatized she would throw herself against walls if approached. "Took me 8 months before she'd let me touch her," he said. "Another year before I could ride her. But that horse saved my life after my wife died. Gave me a reason to get up every morning." "How did you do it?" Mia asked. "How did you not give up?" "I remembered that healing isn't linear. It's more like the tide. Comes in, goes out, but always moving forward in the grand scheme." He patted her hand. "And I remembered that fear is just love that doesn't know where to go yet." The next morning, Mia approached Chance's stall with new resolve. He stood in the corner, head high, nostrils flared, the wound on his shoulder freshly bandaged by the vet. I know you're scared, she said softly. I'm scared too. But we can't let fear win. Instead of entering, she simply sat on the ground outside his stall, her back against the door. And she began to sing, not a particular song, just a quiet, gentle melody that her father used to sing to her when she was small and frightened of the dark. An hour passed. Then two. Her grandmother brought her lunch, shaking her head at the foolishness, but saying nothing more. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, Mia heard a soft nickering and the shuffle of hoofs. Chance had moved to the stall door and was standing directly behind her, his breath warm on her hair. We're going to try again, she told him. Both of us. One step at a time. The following weeks brought a new approach. Mia stopped trying to push forward and instead focused on rebuilding what they'd lost. Each day brought small victories, Chance accepting her touch again, then the halter, then gentle grooming sessions that left him dozing in the afternoon sun. Mr. Emerson began stopping by, offering quiet suggestions and encouragement. Under his guidance, Mia learned to use groundwork to build Chance's confidence, simple exercises that asked for his attention and rewarded his tries, no matter how small. You're not training him, Mr. Emerson explained. You're having a conversation, learning to speak his language. The first time Chance willingly followed Mia around the paddock without a lead rope, Mr. Emerson nodded in approval. That right there, he said, pointing to the horse's relaxed expression, is worth more than any blue ribbon. 3 months after the storm, Mia sat on the paddock fence, watching Chance graze peacefully. His coat now gleamed with health, the scars on his flanks faded to silver against the copper. When she slid off the fence, he raised his head immediately, ears pricked forward in interest rather than fear. Want to try something new today? She asked him. With slow, deliberate movements, she unfolded the soft saddle pad she'd been hiding behind her back. Chance's nostrils flared, but he didn't move away. When she approached, he lowered his head and blew softly against her shirt, the equine equivalent of a deep breath. That's it, she encouraged. Nothing to be afraid of. The pad touched his back. His skin twitched, but he remained still. Mia's heart soared. It wasn't riding. They were still months away from that. But it was one more bridge crossed, one more fear faced together. That evening, her mother found her sitting on the porch, smiling to herself. You look happy, she observed, settling beside her. I am, Mia said simply. We're making progress. Real progress. Her mother was quiet for a moment. I was wrong, she finally said. About Chance. About what you could do together. Your father called today. He got the job in Millaville. We won't have to worry about money so much now. She squeezed Mia's hand. Chance can stay as long as you want him. The local fair came to town in early autumn. On impulse, Mia entered Chance in the in-hand trail class, a simple event where horse and handler navigate obstacles together from the ground. When she led him off the trailer into the bustling fairgrounds, she felt him tense, saw his eye roll toward the unfamiliar sights and sounds. We can do this, she whispered, stroking his neck. I've got you. They weren't the most polished pair in the arena. Chance hesitated at the bridge, snorted at the flapping tarp. But he trusted Mia enough to try to push through his fear one step at a time. When they completed the course, the small crowd applauded, and the judge, a stern-faced woman with decades of experience, approached them afterward. That horse has come a long way, she observed. You should be proud. Pride. Yes, Mia felt it, not for ribbons or recognition, but for the journey they'd traveled together. For every moment Chance chose trust over fear. And now, 6 months after that dollar auction, they stood in the center of the arena, having just completed their first real riding pattern together. Chance's stride was confident, his back relaxed beneath the saddle that had once terrified him. The crowd that had gathered to watch the schooling show murmured in appreciation, not knowing the full story, not understanding the magnitude of what they were witnessing. As Mia guided Chance toward the exit, she caught sight of Mr. Emerson leaning against the rail, his weathered face creased in a smile. Beside him stood her mother, her grandmother, and even Ellie, all witnesses to the miracle that patience and understanding had wrought. We did it, buddy, Mia whispered, leaning forward to stroke Chance's warm neck. We really did it. The copper horse flicked an ear back toward her voice, his stride steady and sure as they walked together into the golden afternoon light, no longer broken, no longer afraid, but whole at last.